fans, my name is Taylor and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. And today I have a very special guest, someone who is new to the show. Please welcome Dom Joseph. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. I really appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to have you here. And for the people that are watching this, if you don't really know maybe a lot about you, can you give us kind of a brief summary, the life story of Dom Joseph for us here?
So I'm just like you. I'm from Ohio, born and raised. I actually just moved down to go Bucks. I just moved down to Mooresville, North Carolina, Labor Day last year, pursuing the career of media in NASCAR. And I currently work at the old Martin Truex Jr. Motorsports facility. I work in the merchandising department for him, which is kind of cool. I've only seen him once though, but no, I do that just to keep myself going down here. But I do have my own media account, whatnot, website. I'll talk about that later and whatnot. But yeah, just like you, pursuing the career in NASCAR media.
Awesome. Well, great to hear about you a little bit. Now, you were actually at the 600, so we're going to talk about that. I'm very excited to hear your point of view from the track. And so I want to talk about, the experience at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Like, how was the crowd? How was the experience? Like the kind of the energy that you had while you were at the track?
I tell you what, I know when I first got my tickets back in February, it was supposed to be limited access, limited capacity, because we didn't know where we were going to be yet by the time the 600 came around. And then I believe it was the beginning of the month, they said it'd be full capacity. And man, that did not disappoint. It was a full house for the 600. And that was really cool to see. It's kind of like the return to normalcy is what it felt like. And it was a buzz, a lot of people there, a lot of tailgating, and it was just good to see we're getting back to it, which is great. And just there was a lot of fans there. And in terms of return to normalcy, I knew we were there when Kyle Busch got introduced and the whole stadium booed. I knew we were there. It's just like, we've arrived. So it was good to see that all again, not even seeing driver introductions and just everyone goes on the track and that's it. But it was good to see. And then of course the big cheers for Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney, what have you. So good time. It was very, very fun. Full house.
I did also want to ask you about like the pre-race ceremonies and the kind of like the feel from the crowd during those. I know watching from home, I'm an emotional person. I did cry. It was beautiful. It was amazing. Like just the importance of the Coca-Cola 600 for Memorial Day, celebrating the troops. How did that feel being there?
I always thought the Indianapolis 500 was the best race to show off Memorial Day because of the tradition of they do the 21 gun salute, they do taps, and then the flyover for the national anthem. But man, the Coca-Cola 600 this year surpassed that with 2 Black Hawk helicopters circling the racetrack, doing a touch and go with troops inside those helicopters waving to the fan, then to have bagpipes play Amazing Race and then taps and the moment of silence halfway through the race. It was just, man, it hits. And for me, I have a brother in the military, so it gets to you. That's for sure. Like, I know you said you got emotional. I did too. You got to just put your head down, close your eyes, and really just think about everyone that's made the sacrifice. And that's what NASCAR wanted to do with the whole NASCAR Salutes program. And, I took some friends with me to the 600 that had never seen NASCAR race before. And the one thing that they thought was really special was that every car had a fallen soldier's name on it. And they said that's really cool that they do that. And that's very special. So NASCAR really takes it serious, and that's something that should be applauded for sure.
First off, I want to say your brother, correct, is serving right now. Well, thank you so much for his service. Also, NASCAR, if there's one thing I love about the sport, I mentioned this during the race actually, is yes, I watch for the race. And yes, the fast cars are cool, but the people and the way that NASCAR celebrates individual groups and individual like organizations and really like is proud of their fan base and what the drivers organizations they support. Just incredible. It's the reason I always come back to NASCAR, is because they know how to celebrate those that have served and celebrate those that are doing great work around the country. The reason I love this sport. So I'm glad, you kind of echo the feeling we got from home, and having your friends that are at a NASCAR race for the first time, getting that type of feeling. is really special. So thank you so much for sharing about your experience at the race, at least the pre-race ceremonies and stuff. We're
Yeah.
going to get into the actual race, but in order to do that, we have to know how the drivers lined up. Of course, we got practice and qualifying this weekend, I guess. But before that, I want to ask you, now practice and qualifying are back. What are your thoughts about that? Are you a fan of it? Are you on the edge? What do you think?
I'm a traditionalist. I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, okay.
You just got to bring it back, especially for me being in the media side of it. And, it makes me think of those trips, man, getting up real early and going to Michigan and getting there Friday morning for practice. And I mean, that's the big media day. Friday, everyone gets to see the drivers and talk to them before all the fans get there and they get all the attention, and practice too. I mean, especially for guys, I mean, I know one person that echoes it so much is Kyle Busch. Like, I need to be able to dial in my race car for the race, because I think it's not only for the fans advantage, but for the racers advantage, of course, is you want to be able to see the best racing possible. And you'll get that when these teams are able to get to as close to 100% race car as they can. So I think that's really good. And then to truly see who the fastest car is in qualifying, so it's not just based on an average and all these statistics that they do to make the automated lineup, if you will. So for Kyle Larson to win pole and dominate the race, it's like, okay, well, that makes sense.
It makes so much sense.
It makes sense that he started on pole because he's got a bad, fast race car. So, yeah, again, I'm a traditionalist. Keep practicing qualifying. I'm tired of getting up on Wednesday to see who's going to start first and not even get to see what kind of race cars are going to be backups or not. So keep it. I like it.
You heard it here first. Keep practicing qualifying. For me, as a bit of a newer fan, I started watching really full time in 2016. 3 practices was a lot. I like kind of the one practice, the one qualifying, and we go. So a little bit of balance there, but I agree with you. I am glad it is back because we saw Kyle Busch run really well this week, and he was the only one able to really contend with all the Hendrick cars. So let's start by talking about the lineup, lining up the field. We mentioned that Kyle Larson was on the pole this weekend, and a pretty stacked Chevy field towards the front. Like, take a look at that. Like, Stenhouse starting position number 2, impressive from him. Suarez in 9th, Chastain was in 10th. Okay, so drivers to the rear were Kurt Busch and BJ McLeod. Now, we mentioned practice, we mentioned qualifying. Let's go to the end results of this race. And by the way, if you have anything to interject here, we're just going to go down the top 10 and beyond. Absolutely interject. I'm so thrilled to have your in-person perspective. So let's start with Kyle Larson. Finally had a dominant run, and then he finally was able to close it out and win this race. Dominant fashion, led 327 laps. Hendrick Motorsports as a whole led roughly 93% of this race, a combined total of 373 laps. What do you have to say about this dominant streak from Kyle Larson finally able to close it out?
Well, if you look at the year 2021 and you look at, obviously it's night and day who the best team is, and it's Hendrick Motorsports. I mean, Kyle Larson, whenever we go to a 1.5 mile track or any track, because you look at Dover too, if Larson's up front, he's going to dominate the race and he's not going to look back. But past couple weeks, he hasn't been able to close the deal. So finally, you look at this weekend, you take the best team, Hendrick Motorsports, and a bona fide amazing race car driver in Kyle Larson, put them together, starting on pole position. He's not gonna lose. And being at the track, and after stage 3, I looked over to my friend, and finally being able to hear him after all the noise finally cooled down, and him and I echoed the same thing. It says Larson's on rails. It's just no issues whatsoever. Maybe once or twice a little bobble in the center of the corner, but that was it. And just he could glue the bottom, and he would cook past cars that were trying to stay on the lead lap. And by that, not like 25th or so cars inside the top 20, just cooked by them on the inside. And then whenever he'd get a challenge from Chase or Byron, he would take their line away on the top, and he would be able to maintain the gap. And then he'd go bottom. They would try to work the top, and he'd still make it work. So unbelievable performance from him. And I'm sure as soon as that white flag fell, he knew it's like, finally, no caution, nothing. And he was even so determined to make sure that he wouldn't lose. He put up, it was a 3-second gap, I want to say, with 10 to go. And I think he took the checkered flag with a 13-second gap. So, I mean, to put daylight in front of you, that's just unbelievable. And, it's not the most dominant 600 performance I've seen. I would definitely argue Truex's 600 was impressive in 2016.
Yeah.
Same with Kyle Busch in 18, but man, he was on rails. No stopping Kyle Larson.
I think the impressive fact here, and obviously I'm wearing my Hendrick Motorsports shirt yet again. I swear I washed it from last podcast. But yeah, Hendrick Motorsports broke their all-time wins record against Petty Enterprises with win number 269. Beat the record. Team to beat. Hendrick Motorsports, Rick Hendrick has to be so proud of the enterprise he has built. Definitely a Hall of Famer right there. The whole team, Hall of Fame. Jimmy Johnson winning a lot of them. Jeff Gordon winning a lot of those wins. As a whole, so big for that organization this weekend. And for it to be Kyle Larson in his first year with Hendrick Motorsports, that makes quite a statement. And so kind of segueing in that into a question I want to ask you, and I'm going to be talking about this at some point when we talk about the playoffs, but how much of a threat is Kyle Larson to these playoffs, to those championships, and what is it going to take for him to win that trophy? And do you think that Kyle Larson is the obvious favorite?
I mean, if he's going to keep leading laps the way he is, I would say yes. Obviously the playoffs, the format is a lot different than it once was. Because if we go back to the chase back in the day,
Yeah.
when I was watching, I mean, it was clear as day. You've got Kyle Larson to be your favorite, but you look at last year, we would be sitting here saying if Harvick and Hamlin don't win this championship, then you're crazy to say that Harvick and Hamlin aren't the favorites. So anything can happen. But to go back to that 269 for Hendrick Motorsports, I'll echo it too. It's unreal to be able to say that they're the number one team in NASCAR now, but odds on. And to think, if you know the history of Hendrick Motorsports, they were one race away from closing shop back in the day. And they said, we'll go to Martinsville, one last go. And if it doesn't work out, we'll close up shop. And sure enough, they won that race, and the rest is history. So they were that close to being nothing. And 269 wins later, here they are. So very special for Hendrick. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I got to say Larson's the title favorite, and his boy Byron, his teammate, is going to give him everything he can handle.
Yeah, I think I have a hypothetical question for you, because this is so far, maybe not impossible, but this probably is nearing impossible. But give it a percentage, maybe 1 to 100, just for a little leverage. How likely would it be for an all Hendrick Motorsports championship floor? Like, how likely would you think that could be?
Oh man,
a loaded question.
That would do a lot of damage to new NASCAR fans for sure. It's like, okay, well, how is this fair? No, I would say, man, I mean, just because of how hard it is and how many times we've done this playoff format already, I would say 20%.
Okay.
I don't think it's not that high. But again, what worries me, what should worry these other teams is Hendrick is only getting stronger, and that's scary. I mean, they're only getting stronger, and just that whole race, Kyle Busch had to do everything in his power to not make it another Hendrick 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh yeah.
So it was that close to being back to, or not back to back, but almost that's scary that good. Again, they that is like they really didn't have ships. So it comes in waves with Hendrick Motorsports, and right now it is very, very strong for HF.
So we've covered the Larson story for this week, and let's move on to teammate Chase Elliott in second. By the end of this race, like you mentioned, Larson was well over 10 seconds ahead of teammate Chase Elliott, just drove away, no competition. But I would say these past few weeks, I mean, well, we know Chase Elliott won at Coda, and then he's had a little bit of up and down season, not bad though, but to have that second place finish at Charlotte, the place he won last year, very good. I have nothing else to really add for Chase Elliott. We really talked about all those Hendrick Motorsports guys, so I'm going to move on to Kyle Busch, because like you mentioned, Dom, almost gave them a run for their money. He literally said, and I quote, "I'm going to have to wreck him," when the booth asked, "What are you going to have to do to win?" And I honestly thought he was going to. The way he was weaving in and out of all these cars trying to make his way to the front of the field, like, the only driver who can do that and be successful and not wreck themselves or anyone else is Kyle Busch, honestly, in my opinion. Like, how did that look from the track? Because from the TV, I was like, something's gonna go bad. Like, it was incredible.
Yeah, for sure. As we were saying to each other at the track, I mean, it was KB's the only one that can beat him.
Yeah.
If it's anybody, it's KFB, right? So uh, no, it's as soon as after that, I believe it was the stage 3 pit stops, right at the end of stage 3 when Larson and Kyle Busch came out 1-2. That's when we started going like, all right, now we got to race
Oh yeah,
because
the Kyle show.
the Kyle and Kyle show. That's what I was saying. Yeah. So I didn't think Chase could. Well, what was amazing too is to go back to Larson. I know we've already talked about how great he was, but man, when Chase Elliott or William Byron would get past him, he would stay right on him. But when Larson would be in the lead, he would check out. So it just shows
Yeah.
you could get past him, but you couldn't shake him. So um, that was very, very cool to see. I mean, how strong he was. But man, we saw Kyle Busch get up there. I was like, all right, now it's a dance now. We're gonna see what he can do. But no, for sure, he was making some bonsai moves. He was making some Kyle Busch moves, and I mean that's what you want to see, especially for me, who I mean I know a lot of people are very opinionated about Kyle Busch, but I still say this has been my viewpoint since I was in college with my old radio show. Kyle Busch is the best driver in NASCAR by far. Just the most raw talent I've ever seen behind a steering wheel. I didn't get to see Dale Earnhardt in his prime. I didn't get to see Jeff Gordon in his prime. But I even put him better than Jimmy Johnson in his prime. I think Kyle Busch is the best race car driver I've ever seen because, in the words of Darrell Waltrip, there is nobody that can do what he does. So he's got a lot of talent. So he was the one to give him a run for it. But man, just that number 5 was too strong for him. But he made a lot of pretty good moves, and to break up the Hendrick party should say a lot about that team that's still searching for an identity. I know they got that win at Kansas, but they're still knocking on the door of trying to get back to the old-fashioned Kyle Busch racing when they're winning multiple races a season.
And I would say, I think this weekend is the first time I have seen Kyle Busch truly race like Kyle Busch in a little around over a year almost, I would say. But also, if DW says no one can do it like Kyle Busch, you have to listen to DW. He was my favorite commentator when he retired. I was so upset, but yeah, nobody does it better than Kyle Busch. But let's move on to 4th place finisher William Byron. I don't have much to say. Again, he was very strong in Hendrick camp. He did very well. He led some laps, So let's move on to 5th place of Bowman, the final contender in the Hendrick Motorsports camp. He struggled quite a little bit today, but I'm shocked that he managed to finish in 5th because he had, I feel like it's shock. He had a shock broken or something like that on his car, I believe is what they said on the broadcast. And he was still able to come back and maybe not contend for a win, but I thought he could have potentially been in the top 3 on Sunday. So impressive stuff from that team. And when the lights came off, when the sun went down, his car came to life. I don't know if you saw that from the track, but that's what I noticed from the TV. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he only got stronger. And again, that should just show you how good Hendrick Motorsports is. I mean, he had those issues, but yeah, the lights went up, and when the sun set, that 48 car came alive. So very impressive run for Bowman and that team.
Another impressive run going down the list here of Austin Dillon. He stayed inside the top 10 pretty much all day, qualified inside the top 10. I'm mentioning here, RCR does have that alliance with Hendrick Motorsports. They get their engines from that shop, I believe, and it's starting to show actually as the season's going on, especially with Tyler Reddick, who finished in 9th. We'll go down to Denny Hamlin finishing in 7th. We're going to talk about him for a second because from the broadcast side of things, as we were talking before the show, I thought Denny Hamlin struggled a bit, even though he finished inside the top 10. But you kind of have a different story about Denny Hamlin, just a little bit. Do you want to kind of talk about what you saw on the track compared to what we might have seen on the TV?
Yes, you were telling me beforehand that they were just saying Hamlin was struggling, but me and my friends all agreed that FedEx 11 car would have so much speed entering 3. No one could dive into 3 harder than Denny Hamlin, and he would gain a solid 3 car lengths on whoever he was chasing. And me personally being a Joey Logano fan, he was racing Joey for a good bit. And I would always get worried going into 3 because Joey would always leave the bottom open because he was using the PJ1, and Hamlin would dive into 3 and get right up beside him. And sure enough, coming off of 4, he would have enough room to go make a pass for or go give him a run for it. So for Hamlin to be able to, for them to say that Hamlin was struggling is kind of interesting to me because I mean he looked pretty darn good out there, at least from my angle. The angle that I had, I mean, no one could dive into 3. No one could carry. I mean, aside from Larson, no one could carry as much speed into 3 as Denny Hamlin and be able to hold on to it and maintain that speed off of 4.
Interesting. Yeah, I was gonna mention the broadcast in the show. I decided not to. We'll mention it maybe another day because there were some issues. I'm not gonna talk about. I digress. But definitely the broadcast, I feel, as you're talking about, showed a different side of the race for Denny Hamlin in particular. Moving on to an impressive finish, Chris Buescher. Holy cow! Like 8th place for Chris Buescher. This is his 4th top 10 this season. We do not give him enough credit, honestly. I don't know if you agree with me here. I would assume you probably do, maybe a little bit, but he ran a fantastic race on Sunday.
Yeah, this whole season's been good for Roush Fenway. It's long overdue too for this team. I mean, look. I mean, when I really started getting into NASCAR, it was around 2008, and that was when they were a 5-car program, and it was them and Hendrick. Those were the 2 super teams. Now it's you could argue Hendrick, Gibbs, and Penske, or just Hendrick, Gibbs. But Roush Fenway has really lost, I keep repeating it, but they've lost their identity since Carl Edwards left the team and Greg Biffle left the team. But man, this was a long overdue run for this team, and for it to be a crown jewel race and to get this finish, that's got to build the confidence at RFR. And especially too with all the speculation and whatnot going on in the background too, with maybe a new guy coming in. There's a lot going on at Roush, and it's so good to see for a team that is so, for an outsider, when you hear the name Roush, you think Mustangs. So to see a Roush Mustang finish in the top 10 of the Coke 600, that's so cool to see. And it's good to see them back where they belong, back up at the top.
I definitely agree. I think seeing that 17 car running well, again, I would say Chris Buescher's had a pretty good run these past 2 weeks. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Nostalgia.
Nostalgia. Let's talk about Tyler Reddick now in 9th place, and then we'll talk about Harvick very briefly before we go outside of the top 10. But Tyler Reddick, another guy we don't give enough credit. This season alone, he continues to impress with 8 top 10s of the season, which at this point is going to pass his career best of 10 top 10s in the season. Well, actually, excuse me, let me correct myself. Last year alone, he had 9 top 10s altogether, and he's already at 8. So he's going to pass that very quickly. Nothing more to say about Tyler Reddick except for let's not forget about him. He's doing so well.
No, RCR has done so well this year, and the whole ECR combination now with Chevrolet is huge. And what I liked about Reddick's race yesterday is he finally proved that he doesn't need to rim ride to be the fastest car out there. He was perfect on the bottom lane, passed guys on the bottom pretty easily. So things are looking up at RCR just like they are at Roush.
I love seeing these. I do not want to call them like smaller teams or lesser teams. I don't like that term because everyone's racing for something. Every team's racing for something. But to see teams like that stepping back up again, and I think the next gen car is going to set it a more even playing field, I would say, next season. I think it's going to give everyone a great opportunity, and the young talents starting to kind of step into their own as they work up in the ranks and they're working through the years in the Cup Series. So yeah, great to see teams like RCR and RFR work their way back into the mix. Finally, Kevin Harvick. Speaking of a driver who's, I guess, not working his way back into the mix, but keeping his team in the mix. Because my goodness, yeah, we won't get into all of that because I don't want to get on my high horse with everything happening at Stewart Haas and theories and whatever. But he had a loose wheel late in the race, and if you have a mistake late in the race at the 600 or even any race, it is hard to work back from. And Kyle Busch, I would say, is one of the drivers who can have a late race mistake, make it back into the top 10. Kevin Harvick is another one of those drivers. He actually, at the beginning of the race, I don't know if you feel the same way from being at the track, but I felt like he actually had a shot at contending to break up the Hendrick party that we saw in the front of the field. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, Harvick was very good at not letting Larson get away. He would keep him within eyesight. And especially for a race like that where something needs to happen to the 5 car to beat the 5 car. To be able to keep him in eyesight is definitely a positive. And you're from Ohio, you know this say. I mean, Harvick is like LeBron with the Cavs. He is just
Yeah.
carrying Stuart Haas because he's the only one that can really do it right now. So it's
Yes.
tough. It's tough waters at SHR. But that being said, to get a top 10 with the circumstances he's been in and to be able to keep up with Larson, that's huge for that team. Um, so very well done by Harvick, and don't give up on that team yet because they'll make it back.
I think he'll have a win at some point this season. I do not doubt that for that team at all. That is your top 10. Let's step outside and look at some drivers we were either pretty disappointed with or we were kind of surprised with. Because even if you run outside the top 10, you can still run really well. But I'm going to let you talk about Team Penske here for a second, because kind of surprising, the majority of the Fords did not run well. And Team Penske in particular, with Brad Keselowski winning this last year, kind of shocked. I'll let you take the reins on this
Yeah.
discussion. I'll just sit back.
Yeah, Ford Performance missed this one, didn't they? Yeah,
They
they really,
did.
yeah, Chevrolet came hungry for this race. And Ford, it was a tough race for them. Logano starting 16th, finishing 17th. I mean, really didn't go anywhere for this race. And Keselowski and Blaney were just kind of there. I mean, you saw them on the track and it's like, oh, there's Keselowski. Oh, there's Blaney. It was a very non-Penske race for Team Penske. So that should be concerning for that team, because since they've gotten all 3 into the playoffs, they've kind of gone downhill, sort of. So
Yeah.
kind of got to beware of that if you're Penske, especially. I mean, you've got all 3 in the playoffs. Yeah, mission accomplished, but you've got to keep that momentum all the way through the season if you want to win the championship. So this is something that they got to pay attention to. But no, I agree with you. It's not just Penske that missed it. Ford Performance missed it. So I know they put a lot of effort into these races. It just wasn't their day. That's just simple as that. And the 600 is one of those races where you've not only got to be good in the day, you got to be good at night. And it seemed like the Fords were decent in the day, and as soon as the sun set and the track started to gain grip, they kind of lost it a little bit. So that was my view from the race. May have been different from your angle, but I just don't think Ford is going to want to look back at this race.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. The feelings mutual here with Ford. They definitely struggled during the day, and then at night it all went away. I'm a little concerned with Brad Keselowski. He has a win, but Talladega, if I'm correct, if I'm
Yes.
remembering correct. Yes. There was no surprise there. I mean, he did well in the iRacing event, which that doesn't always translate, but I was like, yeah, he's gonna do okay. It really doesn't translate, but won that. But since then, his team, at least, not the Brad Keselowski caliber. We have those rumors of him moving to a different team. He's not speaking to those rumors. Obviously, he's able to share when he can, but just the caliber is not there for that team right now. And I'm not sure all that entails. And that's not my job or our job, I guess, to kind of break that down. But just really kind of disappointed with Brad Keselowski in this race in particular. But we talk about Penske. We talk about Penske. Let's move on to some more drivers here. We had Bubba Wallace finishing in 14th, and he had an equipment interference in the middle of the race. I'm kind of blanking on when this happened, but he had a wheel go into Chris Buescher's pit box. NASCAR called it a penalty, and he had to move to the back. But he was able to bounce back up. Now, the reason I mentioned this and I was so disappointed is because he broke into the top 10 and was able to kind of stay there, starting in stage 2 or stage 3. And so it was another maybe missed opportunity for that team. Just it's the silly little mistakes that can really add up. So that was Bubba Wallace's day. Now, 14th place is not bad for that team at all. That is very well, considering they've finished around 20th or maybe in that area. So 14th, not bad at all. And now we have to talk about the kind of the letdowns for Chip Ganassi. Now, they did very well in the Indy 500, but when it comes to NASCAR, a little bit of a different story. They both had issues with the oil pump belt. It broke on their car and Kurt Busch taken out of the race. Ross Chastain, I know you wanted to mention some things about Ross Chastain here, but was able to get back in the race. Of course, he was over 35 laps down, or over 30 laps down, but what was so challenging, what was so kind of shocking about Ross Chastain when he got back onto the field?
Yeah, I got to give an attaboy to Ross Chastain for
Yeah.
not giving up. That's the first thing. It's sad that Kurt Busch, we saw him slow down going into the garage. We're like, oh man, well there goes Kurt Busch. That's too bad.
So sad.
And then he came back out on the track and blew the motor. So it was just like, oh my gosh, yeah. And we were just sitting there. It was like, well, whatever they turned right, they should have turned left. So that's too bad for that team. Unfortunate for Kurt Busch. Still looking for his first win of the year. But for Ross Chastain, attaboy to him. We couldn't see what kind of issues they were having from the stands, but every restart, he had to have been stuck in gear, had to have been stuck in fourth gear, because every restart he would be in the back and would never get up to speed. By the end of the first lap, he'd be half a lap down, and that was tough to see, because the first time it happened, I thought he was a wave around car that just took it too late and was still trying to catch up, or maybe he went to pit road and was trying to catch up, but it was every restart. And then we realized it was like, he must be stuck in fourth gear. But with that being said, he is in a Ganassi Chevy, so he was gaining ground to the back of the pack very, very quickly. So I love the no give up in that 42 team. They could have easily just gone to the garage and saved those parts and saved that car for another race, but it's just, no, we got to gain as many points as we can to stay alive in the playoffs, because that is the name of the game in NASCAR racing. If you're a team in Ganassi, you expect to be a playoff team, and the only way you're going to get there is if you complete every lap. So a good run. Not the number isn't going to show it, the position isn't going to show it, but good, strong run for that team to be able to finish the race.
I will say with Ross Chastain, Circuit of the Americas, I talked about this on my last podcast, but like he wheeled it. Like he's nothing short of impressive. And I will admit, I've mentioned on my show as well that sometimes his driving can scare me because he goes for it. There is no quit with Ross. Dive bombs. He takes risks, and sometimes I'm like, what are you doing, Ross Chastain? But other times I'm like, he's doing what he has to do. He's one of those drivers that's going to take the risks, and he is a driver with true grit. And I think, I didn't realize what was happening with his car, with your view at the track, but my goodness, more respect for Ross Chastain every single day, killing it in that 42 car. I want to end this on a positive note. So I quickly want to mention Corey LaJoie. Now, besides the 500, which was the first time, this is not at the super speedway race. So I'm going to mention this as the first time, but he placed inside the top 20. He finished 19th, and he ran actually pretty well. They mentioned him on the broadcast, and I just wanted to give a little kudos to Corey LaJoie, who, we don't always see him racing inside the top 20 every week, or even inside the top 15, but he did pretty exceptionally well. So good job, Corey LaJoie. Anything else you want to add? Anyone else you want to add to the mix?
I will say LaJoie and Eric Jones, because of their speed, were very disruptive of Kyle Larson's race, because they were very hard to lap, and that was not a common problem for Kyle Larson. But whenever he'd get to Eric Jones and Corey LaJoie, you would see second place creep up. So I don't know, I'm sure there was at some point in that race where Larson was using some choice words for them because he couldn't get by him, but that's in every race. So, but no, great run for Corey LaJoie, and very much deserved for a guy who works his tail off to get to the racetrack.
Absolutely. So that is your top 10 finishing order, the guys that we like to look at outside the top 10. Now let's talk about our, moments of the race. Let's go down the line and talk about I had just two key moments I want to discuss with you, Dom. And so let's talk about the 550 horsepower package. I feel like I kind of say this on the show until my face turns blue, but let's talk about it, because I feel like this race showed a little bit of its weaknesses. Can you explain for the viewers, if you're able to, the difference between the 550 horsepower and then the difference between the 750 horsepower?
So the very simple visual difference is, with the 550 package, there's a much taller spoiler and there's a lot more downforce on these race cars, meaning they're glued to the racetrack, and for the very first time, really, they're full throttle all the way around Charlotte Motor Speedway. What I grew up on with the Car of Tomorrow days, it is full throttle down the straightaways, and you have to let off and brake in the corners. But not with this car, not with the 550 package. The 750 package is a very, very small rear spoiler and very low downforce. So that's going to let those cars slip around a whole lot more. The back end's going to be a lot more loose. And again, there's a lot more power under the hood. So therefore,
Yes.
you're going to be a little bit faster. But again, you're going to have to sacrifice some corner speed. So with that being said, I would be more preference to the 750 because I'm a traditionalist. I grew up on the COT. I still think that that was the best racing I've seen. But the 550 package, I mean, I have no complaints. I saw a good race.
Yeah.
I was at the Coke 600. Come on. But no, I get it. A lot of people didn't tune in to watch Follow the Leader, and that's pretty much what they saw. It's so hard to pass with that package because you're so determined to get in that draft, and that's your only way to stay close to the leaders if you're in that draft. And the one race that sticks out in my mind, especially considering I consider myself a Logano fan, watching the Kansas race last year and knowing that
Yeah.
Harvick sat on Logano's bumper for what felt like 30 laps and couldn't pass him. And I felt like if you're a Harvick fan at that race, you had to have been tearing your hair out because
I was frustrated. I do like
yeah,
Kevin Harvick. I was a little frustrated.
yeah, it's just you're sitting there for 30 laps and you can't get around them just because of how the car is designed and what in the package and whatnot. That would just drive me crazy. So just for it to technically be the only way to pass them is to wreck them. Yeah, I don't know if I'm a fan of that, but yeah, I mean, hindsight 2020, I think the 750 package could have put on a better show, but again, I have no complaints. But I do get why people aren't a fan of the 550 package for sure.
Yeah, I would say it's not, I don't even if it was Chase Elliott, I'm using Chase Elliott as an example because I am a Chase Elliott fan, and there's the arguments online is like, well, if it was Chase Elliott in Larson's shoes and he was leading by dominance, no one would complain. I would still complain. We don't tune in to see Follow the Leader, and but that is also part of racing, and this is how I kind of acknowledge it in my brain here is, they're not gonna the drivers aren't paid to let up and let the second place person catch up to them. They're not paid to put on a good race. So no, they're gonna drive ahead of the field, and they're gonna put on a good race in the way that they know how, which is to win for their sponsors, win for their team. And if that means that they're ahead by 10 seconds at the end of the race, that's kind of how it has to be. That being said, though, I am hopeful and I'm hoping that this next gen car in the package allows for closer racing and better racing to where the leader does not always get away. With that as well, better passing and being
Yes.
able to actually pass. You mentioned, I was actually going to mention this as well with the Kansas from last year. Frustrating, so
Yeah.
frustrating. And
Yeah, I'll take the W whenever I can get one.
yeah, I agree with you on
Whatever
this.
it takes.
Whatever it takes. And I think, gosh, I just hope those next gen cars have something better for the fans, and we can stop complaining about the 550 package and have something else to complain about maybe as we move along and with this new car and the new year. And that is my thoughts. I do want to mention this real quick. I just leave off on this little fun fact, something that someone on Twitter noticed. Avery Hage, I hope I'm saying your name right, on Twitter actually pointed out that the most dominant Coke 600 wins have come in the past 6 years with this sort of package. And I'm like, interesting.
Very true.
It's true. So I'm going to leave it off on that. The final discussion down the line I want to have doesn't necessarily talk about the Cup Series race we saw this weekend. It talks a little bit about what we saw last weekend. And the reason I bring up safety concerns again is because with the Xfinity and truck race. Now, I don't really talk about them on this show. I don't know if you were at the track for those races. Were you?
I was not, but I was watching.
You were watching. Okay. So here's why I wanted to have a really brief discussion with you about some safety things. We with the truck race in particular, there was a slow car on the track. Now, this isn't rain, or this isn't anything that we saw at COTA, but a slow car on the track. There were some issues. I think there should have been a caution pulled up, maybe like a, hey, get off the track, whatever. No. And then we saw Johnny Sauter just got destroyed, ran into the side of that car, took out Trey Hutchins with him, and it was a mess. I mean, And for me, sitting as a fan, I'm like, that could have been prevented. And I don't know if I don't know if you feel the same way. I don't know what your
I
takes are.
100% agree that they should
Yeah,
have thrown yellow as soon as they saw that truck off the pace, as slow as it was. The only excuse I can think of for NASCAR is that they thought he was going to pull into the pits. But again,
he was
he's
all the way up the
going
racetrack by
slow
the
all
wall.
the way up the hill, and knowing that there's still trucks at speed, he's not going to make a dead left to get into the pits with full speed trucks coming because he's waiting for a yellow. So yeah, that's oh yeah, that made I was upset about that. It was just that I 100% agree with you. Could have been prevented.
And I think these past few weeks, especially, and I want to say this season in particular, and I don't know what it is with this season, and I don't know if it's just because it's more clicking with me now, but there have been so many just preventable instances that you don't see them ahead. You're not a future teller, you're not a fortune teller. But there are parts of races with rain or with a slow car, or you should see it coming. In these past few weeks, NASCAR has made very questionable decisions. And as a fan watching this race, I'm like, I like the entertainment. I like to be entertained, but the safety of the drivers is paramount. It is so much more essential than having a good, entertaining race for the fans. Of course, at some point, balance would be cool, but
Yeah.
honestly, it's I've gotten very uncomfortable. And I think a point I wanted to mention here with IndyCar, we had the 500 this weekend, so I'm gonna bring up IndyCar, and kind of what they do is they have a full-time traveling safety team. And this kind of goes with, if there is a wreck on the track, the team is able to get there faster, like mid wreck. We see that with IndyCar, they're able to get there faster. That's something that maybe NASCAR could benefit from. Obviously, it doesn't start things before they happen, like we would like, and that's
Right.
NASCAR needs to really focus on. But something that could be implemented, and I don't know, just there's a lot of things that could have been handled differently these past few weeks with the safety concerns. And I really hope NASCAR can listen to the fans, because I know there's been a lot of conversation on social media about NASCAR really being blind during these races, it almost seems. And so that's my take on that. I don't know if you have anything to add. That was just something I felt was important to talk about as the weeks go on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that safety is the number one priority in racing. And you make the comparison to IndyCar, and I'll say it's obvious the danger level in IndyCar is so much higher than
Oh
NASCAR.
yeah,
Open
and much
wheel,
faster.
and yes, it's the risks are so much greater in IndyCar. But one thing that NASCAR needs to take out of that page is the instant medical response. You could count the stopwatch. It must have been maybe 3 minutes until someone got to Sauter's truck, and
Yes,
his truck, the whole right side was gone. It was gone, and there was nobody there.
it was
And
absolutely terrifying.
you're just sitting there waiting for the window net to drop, and you're also saying, why is nobody there? Why
Mhm.
has no one come to the truck yet? So yeah, that was tough to see. Unfortunate, but that would be the one thing I do agree with you. Just the response needs to be quicker, and just want to be able to make sure that those drivers are okay, especially with situations like that, which in hindsight could have completely been avoided. But it is what it is. I guess the ultimate thing is that's another way to learn. That's the one
Right.
way, the unfortunate way to make adjustments. So it is what it is, and got to go from there.
Exactly. Unfortunately, as we are learning week after week, and even just in life, in order to learn where the line is, sometimes you cross it, and you don't know
Yes.
you cross it until it actually happens. And hopefully, taking away things and testing, continuing to test some rain tires, with if we're talking about Coda in particular, and continuing to kind of learn from these events, I'm hoping that NASCAR can learn and grow from this. That is down the line. A little bit of a kind of a downer to end off that segment with, but now we're going to go into some of our opinions of this race. We're going to rate this race above or below the yellow line now. And before that, I asked those followers on Twitter who follow me about what their thoughts were of the race. And I wanted to shout some of these opinions out, because they actually, not that the opinions played into my view of how I would rate the race, but definitely I had the same thoughts. So I want to shout out Adam Lucas. He said, thankful this was the last 600 with the doo-doo cheeks package. Hopefully the 2022 car will create more excitement at 1.5-mile ovals in general. Yes, I agree. I say that comment because Adam is a dear friend. Thank you, Adam, for that comment.
That might have been the most professional answer I've ever heard. I love the terminology. Well
I
said.
know. Adam is a fellow friend who's working his way into the media side of things. So definitely, I appreciate keeping it tame, if
Yeah,
maybe
let's stay PG.
keeping it PG. Jason L said that relaxing Sunday drive thus far. He commented in the middle of the race. We have Milo Gerd. I hope I said your name right. He said Fox commercials, too many. I agree. We saw a lot of them during yellow flags, which, of course. Our friend of the show, Zachary Bell, said it's too long, 600 kilometers. And I'm like, yep, too long. And then finally, Jeffrey Fartney said that NBC broadcast of the Indy 500 was way better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I would agree. I hope I said all the names right. I appreciate everyone's comments and feedback for the race. Definitely, like I said, those opinions played into my own. And now we're going to rate this race. Let's race. Let's do above or below the yellow line. I'm going to let Dom lead off on this. 0 to 100, if you've seen the show, you know kind of how it works. 50 is the baseline, on the line. Where would you rate this race and why?
It's a crown jewel race,
Yeah.
I mean, you got the Daytona 500, the Coke 600, the Southern 500, and the Bristol Night Race. Those are the four races that every team circles. It's like, this is the one. It's going to be a full house. It doesn't matter who's doing great that year. It doesn't matter. Anyone can win it. It's the 600. 600 miles. It's got to be 600 miles. I don't like hearing the talk of 600 kilometers. It's always been 600 miles. Keep it that way. You don't touch history. That's my thing. I'm still getting over the fact that the July race, that still hurts. But yeah, I gotta say 70%, because it's a crown jewel race, Memorial Day weekend. The fans were back. Yeah, the race was a lot of follow the leader, but that's just racing. It's just the way it goes. Hendrick Motorsports got it right. They dialed that race car in perfectly. You should be applauding that 5 team for getting it that right. I mean, that's so impressive, So it was a good race for the casual NASCAR fan. There was only one actual caution, and it was for or two, Kurt Busch's engine and Ryan Newman's tire blowing out. So there wasn't a lot of wrecks. There were no wrecks. There weren't many incidents. So you could say it was boring. I thought it was a good race, and I'll dive into the history books of quotes from Tony Stewart. Look up racing in the dictionary and look up passing in the dictionary. We're racing here. If you want us to go passing, we can go on 495 and pass all you want. We're racing.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Always bring up the Tony Stewart book of quotes.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would give it a 70%. And, giving it a 70%, same reasoning, is because, it is a crown jewel. I gave the Daytona 500 a much higher rating than I should have when I started the channel because it was a crown jewel. And I was so disappointed with it. But like this one, I feel good about my rating because we did see great racing, Yeah. We saw Kyle Busch try to get in the middle of Hendrick Motorsports. We saw Hendrick Motorsports dominating. We did see some pretty good passing. Restarts were pretty exciting in my opinion. And I feel like a 70% is well deserved. So for that reason, I feel okay giving the race what I did. Yes, the casual fans might have been like, this was boring. Like, there was no action. And like, you just got to look a little deeper. 600 miles, yes, very long. But if you look for the right things and you're tuned in on the right people during the race, seeing them go up in the leaderboard and down on the leaderboard, it was a pretty good show for the crown jewel. So that was our race ratings. That was the show. Thank you all so much again for watching another episode of Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Dom, thank you for being on the show. Before we close, do you want to mention to the people that are watching, to the fans, where we can find your content outside of the show?
I get to plug myself. Very good. So I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Dom Joseph Racing. That's my my blog account. DomJosephRacing.com. I have all my blogs and personal video interviews and whatnot on there, and try to keep as updated as I can. I do NASCAR, Formula One, IMSA, and IndyCar stuff. So I do as much as I can. Yeah, I try to be as professional as I can through all of it, and really appreciate you having me on. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoy your work. You do really well, and I think we're off to a good start with this 2021 season, and just hope it can keep going. They said it's the best season ever. I don't know if I agree with that yet, but we'll see. There's still a lot of racing left.
Yes, there is a lot of racing left, ways to go. Hope to have you back on the show. This was so much fun. We know where to find Dom, now where to find me. Go on my Twitter page for race day coverage and also updates from the NASCAR world. Finally, also at the podium finish, we have great content. And then an announcement. I mentioned last show I was going to announce some pretty exciting news. Here it is. I will be making my debut with Pole Position Out of the Groove Weekly's viewer guide. I'm so excited to be starting to write for them, putting my content out there on a bigger scale. I've been a big fan of Out of the Groove for a few years now, so I'm pretty excited. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll have it in the link down below. My article that it's going to be up is about kind of the safety concerns that we mentioned at the end, talking about COTA and previewing it for Sonoma, which we are going to this coming weekend. So a great place to kind of tie in that conversation. So please check that out. Also, make sure to check out this channel, like, subscribe, tell your friends and family. And while you do that, I want to thank you all so much for listening to Above the Yellow Line. And until next time, we'll see ya.